They called her the Saint of the Wounds. They swore angels guarded her cell at night. But when the candles went out, the only thing moving in that darkness was her knife. In a century where women were meant to pray, she learned to command. And she found the oldest secret of all. If you suffer publicly enough, men will give you anything. Spain, late 1400s. Before she was a legend, she was a shoemaker's daughter. Born in a town where the bells rang louder than reason. Every strike of the hammer, every cough from the chimney came with the whisper that heaven was always watching. Her name was Maria, plain, poor, quiet, the kind of girl the world usually forgets, unless she bleeds. At 12, she fainted during Mass, trembling, her lips whispering Latin she'd never been taught. The priest said it was the spirit. Her mother said it was grace, but the neighbors. They said the devil had kissed her forehead. 2 months later, she begged to enter the convent. Her mother wept. Her father thanked God for one less mouth. The gates of St. Lucia closed behind her with a thud that sounded like destiny. Inside was silence, stone corridors, iron prayers, the smell of wax and old incense. She slept on straw, prayed on knees until they bled, and waited for heaven to notice her. It did, or seemed to. One Easter morning, as the sisters knelt in prayer, Maria's hands began to bleed. Drops formed perfect circles on the marble floor. She whispered, "Christ shares his pain with me." The convent erupted. Relics were brought, hymns sung, bishops summoned. By sunset, the town was calling her Blessed Maria, and for the first time, she smiled. Pain had given her power. Pilgrims arrived by the hundreds, some seeking forgiveness, others curiosity. Coins piled in baskets. Nobles sent candles the size of children. Every gift, every whispered prayer came to her feet. She learned to time her trances. On feast days, she would collapse, eyes rolled to white, blood seeping from her palms. When she awoke, she spoke softly of angels and warnings. The priests wept, the crowds believed, and the girl who once begged for food now had a key to every door. At night, she hid a blade inside her rosary, small, sharp, perfect for slicing skin without tearing the flesh. She practiced in secret, learning how to cut for spectacle, enough to bleed, not to die. Each wound a sermon, each scar a signature. The abbess tried to warn her. Miracles belong to God, not to you. Maria only smiled. Then let God take them back. He didn't. The church adored her. Rome sent letters. Scholars wrote of her holiness. Her convent overflowed with novices desperate to touch the hem of her veil. She chose a circle of 7, young, frightened, obedient. She called them the Chosen. They prayed until dawn, whipped their backs until the floor ran red. She told them pain opened the gates of paradise. They believed her, because believing hurt less than doubt. Soon she dictated everything, when they ate, when they slept, who they spoke to. Confession became her weapon. They told her their secrets. She told them what God required in return. A lock of hair, a week of silence, sometimes blood. The bishop visited one spring morning. She told him God had shown her corruption within his diocese. He paled, begged for forgiveness, and donated land to her convent. By nightfall, she owned half the valley. That was the day she stopped praying to God and started speaking as him. The years turned her miracles into empire. The convent walls grew higher, thicker. She replaced the abbess, renamed the chapel Sanctum Dolorum, the House of Pain. When novices cried from fasting, she said, the body must be broken for the soul to stand. When a nun fainted, she whispered, angels carry her through suffering. But angels never came, only Maria holding the whip. Late one winter, a new girl arrived, Lucia, 16, with clear eyes and questions. She watched Maria's trances, her wounds, her followers kissing the floor. And one night she whispered, "Mother, why does God need witnesses?" Maria smiled. "Because doubt offends him." A week later, Lucia was gone. They said she'd fled the convent, but in the crypt, a smell of decay grew stronger each day. When the bishop asked, Maria wept. The devil has stolen another soul. And the church believed her. By 50, Maria's fame eclipsed priests and princes. Kings sent emissaries to touch her veil. Rome debated sainthood. She never looked more fragile or more dangerous. Inside her head, the voices shifted. No longer angels, not even demons. Just echoes of her own hunger. "Greater than purify them," they said. "Cleanse the unfaithful." She obeyed, and the cleansing began. The fires began with the faithful. They burned letters first, then faces. Maria's chosen carried out her visions. One poured ash into a chalice to purify sin. Another pressed a rosary to a novice's throat until her confession turned to choking. Each act blessed by Maria's whisper, "Greater than pain is proof of love." By now the convent was less a house of God than a fortress of obedience. Villagers heard cries at night. They said it was exorcisms. They were half right. The bishop tried to visit again. He never made it inside. The gates locked. Candles glowed like watchfires. When he demanded entry, Maria replied through the bars, "Greater than heaven answers only to those who bleed." Even Rome hesitated to touch her. Saints were currency, and she was their most profitable one. But power rots. It always does. A rumor crawled from the cloister. A young nun, half-starved, half-mad, escaped through the kitchen tunnel. She reached a Franciscan friar and whispered of chains, cellars, graves. He thought she was delirious until she showed him the scars. The church could no longer pretend. An inquiry began. Quiet, secret, terrified. Maria welcomed them with open hands. Bleeding as always, she smiled at the inquisitors. "Greater than brothers, have you come for confession or for proof?" They asked about the missing nuns. She answered, "They were taken by temptation." They asked about the blood. She said, "It is God's reminder that I am chosen." And when they searched the crypt, they found temptation still wearing habits and bones. The trial was not public. It could not be. The church doesn't bury saints, it rebrands them. She was charged with heresy, witchcraft, and murder. She called it misunderstanding. They asked for miracles. She offered silence. Weeks turned to months. No tears, no repentance, just a thin smile, as if she pitied them for their lack of faith. One night, the guards heard laughter from her cell. They found her sitting cross-legged, humming hymns backward, blood dripping from fresh cuts shaped like crosses. "Greater than he came back," she said. "Not Christ." The one who listens. Her confession broke the scribes. She claimed she'd signed a covenant with the dark bridegroom when she was 12, that every miracle had been his gift, every wound his reminder, that she had cleansed her sisters to prepare the world for him. The inquisitors wanted fire, Rome wanted silence, so compromise was made, no flames, no martyrdom, only a cell walled in brick, one slit for air, one hole for bread and water. She blessed the stones as they sealed her in. "You build my tomb," she said, "but you cannot bury God's voice." Decades passed. The convent changed hands. New sisters prayed over the same floor, scrubbed clean of blood. Yet at night, candles still guttered without wind. Some claimed to hear a woman murmuring psalms through the walls. Others said they smelled iron, the scent of rust, or maybe of sin. When the masons finally reopened the cell a generation later, they found her body seated upright, hands clasped around a rosary fused with rust. her eyes gone, her lips bitten through. On the wall, scratched in Latin, "Greater than fides est potestas." Faith is power. Centuries blurred fact and legend. Scholars argued she was a fraud, a woman weaponizing suffering in a world that only noticed women when they suffered. Psychologists called it hysteria. The church called it tragedy, but the people called it proof, because power wrapped in holiness always survives. Even now in the archives of Cordoba, there's a single parchment unsigned by any scribe. It warns against false saints who speak too much of pain. The ink has turned brown, or maybe it was never ink at all. Her story became sermon, then caution, then myth. Every century retold it differently. The witch, the visionary, the victim, the monster. All true, all false, depending on who needed the miracle. The legacy of the saint of sin lived quietly. In paintings of bleeding hearts, in statues of women eyes closed in ecstasy, in every preacher who still says pain purifies. They buried her name. But her method? It became the blueprint for power, because once the world learns to worship suffering, anyone can rule, as long as they bleed beautifully enough. The last record of her convent says the chapel collapsed in a storm. Locals rebuilt it as a church for orphans. On the first night, the caretaker found a single phrase scratched into the new altar. Greater than she was never forgiven. He left it there. Some truths don't need polishing. Faith can save. Faith can heal. But faith can also kill, especially when it belongs to someone who realizes she can make men fear her more than God himself. They called her blessed, they sang her name in candlelight, but she carved her kingdom from obedience and pain, and when she finally met silence, it wasn't repentance. It was rest. She was a nun. She was an outlaw, and she proved that the holiest monsters are the ones we choose to believe in.